Welcome to the Everybody Matters podcast. This show is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. Don't forget to connect with us on the web at Barry-Wehmiller.com, on Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and check out our blog, trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart, your host. We at Barry-Wehmiller hope you're all staying safe during this extraordinary time in the U.S. and in the world. And if this time has shown us anything, it's that the need for true leadership, truly human leadership, is greater than ever. There are a lot of people hurting, and the true leaders will rise up to help heal humanity during this difficult time. And one of those leaders is Kristen Hadeed. If you've listened to this podcast, you're familiar with Kristen. She's been on twice before. She's the founder of Student Maid, a successful cleaning company that has employed thousands of students over the last decade. The idea for Student Maid came to Kristen in 2007 when she was a sophomore at the University of Florida, and she fell in love with a $99 pair of jeans at the mall, and her parents wouldn't give her money to buy them. Well, since then, Student Maid has grown not only into a successful company, but one that is also training the next generation of leaders. You can find the full story of Kristen's journey in her book, Permission to Screw Up, which you can find with many other resources at her website, KristenHadeed.com. On this episode of the Everybody Matters podcast, we're bringing you an edited version of a conversation Kristen had with Sara and Matt Whiat of Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute, Barry-Wehmiller's consulting arm that shares truly human leadership with other organizations who place equal importance on people, purpose, and performance. As the current COVID-19 pandemic hit the U.S., Student Maid was greatly affected in many ways. And in this conversation, Kristen shares how her company has handled the crisis without sacrificing people or their principles. And we start this conversation with Kristen talking about the influence of her parents on her life and leadership. Here's Kristen Hadeed.
My mom and dad, love them. They encouraged my sister and I, Lauren, to follow our curiosity and to go after the things that were exciting to us. And my dad's an attorney, and I remember watching him turn down cases that would really have made him a lot of money, but because he wasn't excited about the work, he turned them down. And so I think when I graduated from college and I had this small cleaning business, I got offered this really well-paid job in finance, and there wasn't really anything internally that felt excited about that. And so I ended up, sticking with the company that wasn't making any money at the time because I learned from my dad's example. My mom is the most empathetic, compassionate, giving, generous person I've ever met in my life. And her values absolutely were imparted on us. And I think, very much are the foundation of my company. And most importantly, they both taught us that it's okay to fail, that the only way to learn and to grow and to be better than you were yesterday is by falling down and then having the courage to get back up and try again. And so when my sister and I had hard moments growing up, my parents did not swoop in and save the day and do the hard things for us. They really pushed us to do those things on our own. And at the time, we weren't really happy about that. But now when I look back, I recognize that they were teaching us to be resilient.
Hence I didn't have money to buy jeans, because your dad was like, you're not buying $100 pair of jeans, so you can go work for that, right? That's
Exactly.
really interesting. That's great. Thank you.
So fast forwarding a little bit farther, if you could, and this is an interesting question to ask at this time, but if you could talk to the newly graduated Kristen Hadeed, you're thinking about taking that job in finance, you've got this cleaning company, you've just graduated from the University of Florida. What do you tell her? What's the advice you give?
Get ready, because it's about to get crazy. At that point, I'm 21 years old. I hardly have any leadership experience, any business experience. At that point, we had, I think, 60 people in the company, and I had so much to learn. And the business that we're in, cleaning, it's not a glamorous industry, and people generally don't love cleaning toilets. And so how do you create this environment where people feel like they matter and where they're inspired? And so I just had no idea at that point in my life how challenging it would be. And at times throughout my journey, I would wish that I had picked any other business and any other industry. And now I'm so thankful that this is the business that chose me, because I think I had to learn lessons that I might have otherwise not learned. Otherwise, the company wouldn't succeed. And so I'm very grateful that this is the industry and the business that I'm in.
It's interesting as you started remarking this. I remember when you and I met out and we were doing some work out in Aspen and you were speaking, we were with a very, very senior crowd and you gave a talk and everybody was like, well, why don't we just all do what she's doing? Because there was a bunch of talk about millennials and, it just turns into kind of this generic circle of complaints. And then you got up and started talking about, well, I do this. Everyone was like, well, she's got all the answers. And I should have mentioned this in your intro, but there's something about you that is extraordinarily authentic because of how open you are. We're just like, even right there talking about, well, this is what I was doing and I made these mistakes and I didn't have this. Even your book, Permission to Script, is humility and authenticity. Where does that come from and how do you think it serves you or other leaders pretty well?
I think it comes from growing up. I remember we used to sit at the dinner table and we would talk about what went well that day and what didn't, and what we learned from it. And my parents would talk about it. And so our dialogue was just very open and honest and authentic and real. And there was this really defining moment early on in the business when 45 of the 60 team members that I had at that time walked out on me. It was horrible. They just walked out, 75% of the team. And I knew I had to get them back. And the challenge was I wasn't sure why they walked out. I didn't have the insight or the self-awareness as a leader. And what I did is I just spoke honestly. I said, I've never done this before. I've never led a team. I can imagine I did something wrong. I don't know what I did wrong. I need you to help me. And they came back. And that was so early in my journey that it taught me that the best thing you can do is to just be real. And if you can be real, you're human. That's how we build trust. So that's really stuck with me. And I think especially in a time like the time we're in, it's so important that we're authentic, we're willing to be vulnerable, and we're willing to share what's on our mind, on our hearts, because that's really how we build connection.
Yeah. So bring that idea into present time, and maybe whatever it was 6-7 weeks ago, you're making a decision and you have an essential, but literally you're a cleaning company. Like you can keep your doors open from a government control standpoint. And so you have a really critical choice to make. Can you walk us through what are the factors that you used to make that decision? And then how did vulnerability play a role in communicating that to your team?
Yes. When this all started happening, before the restrictions and regulations were in place, I knew that we had this, it felt like a moral dilemma. Do we stay open? Because as you said, we're in the cleaning industry. One could argue that this is our time to serve and to help and to keep people safe. And there's that. And then on the other hand, is it safe? Is it safe for our customers, for our team members? And also, we have clients who are over the age group that are at risk. And the challenge with that is we have some elderly clients who depend on us to do things like take out their trash. They have dementia. If we don't show up, who takes out their trash if they don't remember? And so it just felt like a very impossible decision. And I've learned that when we have choices like that, like those to make, invite people in. So we called it a company-wide virtual meeting. I posed the challenge, do we stay open? Do we close? And unanimously, the team decided to stay open. And that was the choice. And we left the meeting. I went to bed. I got up at 4 a.m. because I had this feeling in my gut that just felt off. And we all know that feeling. And I think it's when we have that, it's tugging at our values. Like, that decision you made, I don't know. So I started to think about it. And I realized that money is such a huge part of the equation. That the reason that people want to stay open is because, of course, they're afraid, what if we close and that means I don't get a paycheck? And of course, we consider the financial health and stability of the company. And so I asked myself, if money wasn't a part of this at all, if I knew that we had enough money, if our team knew that they would have enough money, what choice would we make? And we would close. I mean, no question. So I called the team back for another virtual meeting. I told them that I really felt strongly we should close. And I recognized the financial piece of this. So I made a commitment that everyone would be financially taken care of. And when we made that choice, it was scary because I knew what that meant. I knew it meant a lot of financial rocky times ahead. But when we told our clients, the response was, thank you for making the humane decision. One of our clients, who is the daughter of one of our elderly clients who has dementia, said, thank you so much. We'll make sure he's taken care of. So they bought gift cards. Like, our clients really appreciated the decision that we made. So that was kind of how it all happened.
When you're making these kind of decisions, maybe this is kind of a three parts here, where as a CEO that's making these kind of decisions, where are you going for trusted information? And then where do you go for, let's call it, support and or guidance?
I have several mentors and also just friends that I really admire. I think the key there is people who embody the same values that are really important to you. And, I noticed that a lot of people that I admire are struggling with the same choice. And so just having people that can be a sounding board, and really we have the answers within us. It's finding those people who will seek to understand and listen and help us find what we already know is true. And I think that the team has really been that support for me. I feel very comfortable going to the team and saying, here's what I know and here's what I don't know and what I'm struggling with. And I would just love if we could talk this out. And I used to think before that I had to find a different support group for that. And then I was like, why not just talk to the very people that this impacts? And so we've learned to create that support within, internally.
Yeah.
And can you just talk quickly to where, as a business owner, where do you go for trusted information, COVID related, those type of things? Where's the source that you like?
I mean, every day I read the latest on the news. Our local chamber has been wonderful with updating daily, different things related to the community and just overall. And I check that. And then I've got several mentors and coaches that we check in with each other, send each other resources as we find them. So, and that's a huge part of this, is staying in the know, and making sure that you're dedicating time every day to stay current, because there's so much that's changing every day.
So how to talk to not necessarily the technicalities, the PPP, certainly that's information people can kind of download, but when you're kind of faced with this challenge, I know that you not just did the PPP process, but applied for all of these grants. Can you just talk about kind of the thinking process or the creativity that you apply to? I have this brand new challenge. I need to get not revenue, but I need income from other sources. How do I even begin to figure out that problem?
Yes. So the same day we made the commitment to keep everyone paid and close for cleaning services, it was like instant survival mode. It reminded me of the beginning days of Student Maid. And I was just Googling like grants for female business owners or grants for COVID, and there were so many that I found, and I applied for all of them. And we received one from Bumble Business, a $5,000 grant. There's still several that we're waiting to hear back on. And then when I first learned about the PPP and all the loans that the SBA are doing, I applied for all of those as well. And I was very early on in the application process. And so I think, we sort of have to redefine success. And what I did with the team is we looked at, okay, what are our costs and how much is it going to cost us in order to keep everyone paid and honor that commitment? And then that became, okay, this is the goal, that we've got to find a way to cover this no matter what it means. It could mean loans, it could mean grants, it could mean, and success right now is taking care of our people, and that's it. And as long, and it's not, that's it, that's everything. If we can look back and say we did that, check, we achieved success. So it just became, revenue doesn't always have to be someone buying a service or paying for a service. It could be a grant or a loan, and that's kind of how we looked at it.
That's great. What about, as you are so close to this, what about some positive aspects that you've seen come out of the current pandemic? Like, what are some things you're like, oh, that's an unforeseen benefit? And I don't mean to make light of this situation, but I don't want to silver line the whole thing, but what are some things you look at and go, now that's going to be positive about this?
Well, I have a funny story. So we got a loan from the state of Florida. It was a disaster loan, and it was a $100,000 loan. And there was a clerical error in the loan paperwork. And so actually our loan was only supposed to be $50,000. but they gave us 100 and we didn't know about the error. So a couple weeks goes by and we get a phone call from the state, and this wonderful woman, she says that I have been dreading this call. I need $50,000 back. And there was a mistake. And, I had a choice in that moment. Like, do I get upset and frustrated, or do I make this a memorable moment for both of us that we will look back on with positivity, And I said, well, the good news is I wrote a book called Permission to Screw Up. So if there's anyone that you want to make this mistake with, it's me. We laughed and we connected. I just think that right now we have this opportunity to be a bright spot for people, and for people to be a bright spot in our lives. And it, like you said, there's so much devastation, and we don't want to take away from that. There's also so much beautiful things that we're witnessing, that the best of human spirit, and just in my own company, things that we're implementing that we never had before. And I'm like, why didn't we do this before? So there are good things that are coming out of this, and it's okay to feel sad and to feel devastated, and also to see these moments that are just beautiful and acknowledge them and be a bright spot.
Yeah. Can you mention something, like when you mentioned that part about the team, like how come we haven't done this before? Like what are some of those examples?
Yeah. So as a leadership team, we meet every week. We as a company do not meet every week. And so when this all started really, happening, we began weekly company-wide all hands meetings, and they've been amazing. And I'm thinking, why did we just now start this? We should have been doing this for 13 years. And so that's something that will absolutely carry beyond this.
From a standpoint of how you focus and prioritize your time, I know we were chatting before the call, you mentioned, I just think about, okay, what are the 3 things I can do today that will have an impact? How do you look at the various roles of it? I'm taking care of my people. Yes, I'm leading the business. I'm doing the recovery stuff, but I'm also preparing for the readiness stuff that's needed. How do you kind of prioritize and decide where you're going to put your focus of energy?
I think it's really challenging right now because you feel like you're being pulled in all these directions. And it's not just, work, it's your family, your kids, everything is pulling at you. And so every day it becomes a challenge. There's so many things, they're all important. How do you choose where to focus your time? And what I've always done before this is just every day in the morning, what are my 3 things? What are the 3 things that if I can accomplish these things, I will feel at the end of the day like this was an impactful day? And sometimes those things are really heavily work related. And sometimes it's something like going for a long run because I haven't been putting myself, first, and I really need to do that for my own mental health. Or like yesterday, I haven't seen my sister in a while. And so one of my 3 things was to spend quality time with my sister. We're in the same house, but we're both so busy, we're not really connecting. And so it changes every day, but impact can be whatever you define it as. It could be financial impact. It could also be the impact on your mental health, your physical health, your relationships. So I think balance it's really, I would say, impossible. Like, how can we be equally balanced every day? I think it's just looking at your day and making sure that the things you're choosing to focus on, you're not too heavily focusing on one area and completely neglecting another. It's just kind of this constant flow. And sometimes you're going to give more energy to work and sometimes to family, and that's all okay.
Can we talk about, I like what you were mentioning about, like, I'm going to redefine success. And in this case, success is about all of us making it through. It's not about saving a company. It's about saving each other. That's what success looks like. So you go out and you do all this stuff. You're very vocal on social media. So I really enjoyed the post where Danny Meyer, local St. Louisan, he, had a lot of money because of the restaurant loophole, if you will call it that, for Shake Shack, and then gave it back. I believe the number was 10 million, I think. Mm-hmm. And then you called out another real big steak joint that has 2 first names in it as like, hey, listen, take notice. Tell me about the business leader's responsibility in a time like this. So this might even be part of human evolution. Like the fact that you're talking about this, other people are mentioning it. So tell me about how did you come to that conclusion as your responsibility to take care of your employees in this way?
Well, I think, the example you're sharing is the PPP program was intended to help small businesses. But the program was released so quickly that a lot of the stipulations weren't clear. And so you see these larger companies applying for those funds, and small businesses understandably are upset because that money was intended for small business. And I have empathy you're looking at trying to figure out how to best take care of your people. So I can't necessarily blame them for applying, but morally and my values, I wouldn't if I was in that position. I think that, my every day, I'm focused on how can I best take care of my people. And sometimes that's, I don't want to, I don't know the name of the steakhouse that shall not be named. I would like to think that was the same mentality that they had in looking at to apply for that. But I think our values are more important than ever, and making sure that the decisions we make are in line with those values, because really this is the greatest test of leadership, of culture, of all of that. And right now people learn what we really stand for. Do we really walk our talk, or are the values that we say are so important are just merely words on a wall that we don't really live by? And I think we're earning future loyalty right now with the choices we make and the choices we don't make.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the questions that's coming in is how does technology help you manage the emotional management of your team, the fear, the anxiety, what have you? And I'll just kind of add on to that. How do you build trust virtually? And it's something that you've already been doing. It's not you can do this inside of COVID, outside of COVID, but how do you create that connection when you're limited to this kind of a format?
Our leadership team has been fully remote for the last 5 years. And I remember it being such a shock, from going to being together in the same office to now we're behind screens. Some of the members of our leadership team moved across the country. We're in different time zones. And so fortunately, we've learned a lot that I think has really helped us for this time. And what we've learned is it's more important when you're behind a screen to be present. I mean, more present than ever. We say video on, because if your video is off, people are sitting there wondering, are you paying attention? Are you multitasking? We do a moment of silence before we begin, just to give everyone the chance to get in the right, frame of mind. We always start with personal check-ins. And that's just a chance to share what's happening personally. If you have a big team, you can use breakout features on Zoom and say, okay, everyone check in with your group of 3 or 4. And that sends the message that we care about you more than we care about the business that we're here to discuss. And then really addressing hard things head on, because if you sweep them under the rug and you avoid them, they build up. And it's especially hard when you're not in the same room to discuss those things. So we've really everything we've learned as a leadership team, we've tried to carry to the whole team. And we do our weekly video meetings, even while we are not cleaning over the last several weeks. We start with personal check-ins. It's very much the same, present. But it is an adjustment. It is.
Yeah, it's a great question to ask, but even being on Zoom and watching how great a communicator you are, but you think about if this was just a call without the video, how much we lose in that communication part of it. I think there are different platforms, but Zoom can show up to 49 different individuals on video at one time. And so I know there are a lot of platforms out there. Zoom is just one of them. So on video. Hey, your job. So you're an author, you're a jet-setting keynote speaker, you hang around with really important people, you're a CEO, you started your own company. Something about your job that people don't know, but you wish they did.
Something about my job that people don't know that I wish they did. I feel like everyone knows everything because I have such a big mouth and I tell everybody everything. I guess it would be the enormous responsibility I feel every day to take care of the people that work with me. And I don't take that responsibility lightly. It is on my mind when I go to sleep. It's on my mind when I wake up. And I think right now it's an even larger feeling of responsibility because it goes so much beyond providing a paycheck. And just right now I'm thinking, how are they all doing? How are they having a hard day? Are they having an okay day? And I want to be there for everyone. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's an enormous responsibility and opportunity.
Yeah, thanks.
Kind of building on that, if there's some people listening in and who will listen to this recording who might be in a similar position, and perhaps their leadership role is they're leading a team or they're also running a company, what's your kind of 3 pieces of advice or, hey, 3 things you can do tomorrow along those lines who kind of share that same feeling of responsibility?
Yes. So whether we're leading ourselves, leading a team, 3 things I would do. 1, acknowledge fear. Say it out loud. What are you afraid of as you look at this next chapter? If you're leading a team, ask your people what they're afraid of as we look at this next chapter, and have that conversation out loud. Have a discussion around what is worst case scenario. I asked my team, what if we could never clean a house again? What will we do? And it was actually really fun to have that conversation, because we came up with these ideas that we probably would have never come up with. But I think sometimes when we just think about worst case and we wrap our heads around that, and we have a plan, it becomes easier to move forward in the midst of fear. The second thing I would say is resilience is such an important lesson or muscle right now that we need to be working out. And resilience is really being able to get back up again, and to know that even when you're having this really hard time, that you're learning something, and that one day you'll look back and say, hey, we something good really came out of that, even though it was a really hard time. So how do you strengthen that muscle? You could have a conversation around what are the hardest times that we've had as a team. And even thinking personally, what are your hardest times? And what were the lessons that came out of that, the opportunities that came out of each of those times? And just that, I think what that does is it reminds us that even though this is hard, we will one day be saying about this what we've said about these hard times that we've experienced in the past. And then the third is redefining success. What is success right now? And I think planning is guessing. So no one knows what exactly will happen after this. So maybe we look at it on a shorter term basis, like the next 2 months, the next quarter. What is success? And define that, and give yourselves permission to walk away from what success was in January, because the world that we're in now is very different from the world we were in January.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And the first one you mentioned about getting some feedback and asking people how they were doing, you mentioned about how the team, and it was a really great conversation. So a question came in from the audience all the way from Prague, Czech Republic. So thanks, Martin, for the question. It was, what's the biggest surprise you didn't expect from your team, which made you happy or proud?
So we haven't been cleaning for 2 months, and we made the commitment to keep everyone paid. However, we couldn't afford to have the rate of pay that everyone is used to getting every week. We couldn't afford those same amounts. And so what we did is we said, here's what we have, and we're hoping that we can all take care of one another. And we're hoping that if you need, if we were to split this evenly, this is how much everyone would get. And we're hoping if you need more, you'll speak up. And if you can take less, you'll speak up. And that together we'll take care of one another. And that's what happened. And it happened every single pay period. And it's not that I'm surprised, because I know that about humans. We want to take care of one another. It's about compassion and caring for each other. I think I just was surprised that it happened consistently every single pay period. I was just like, there's got to be one where this isn't going to work. And it just kept working until we got our PPP funding. So yeah, just amazing.
We've already talked about this a little bit, but if you had to kind of distill it into kind of one singular leadership attribute that you feel like people need to have during this time, what would be at the top of your list?
Authenticity. Being able to share realism, optimism, being able to share the things you're afraid of, the things that you're hopeful for. I think right now, trust. We can build so much trust in these times by just being honest and open and inviting people in. And I think that's really, every day I'm just like, how can I, instead of just keeping the things inside that are weighing on me, how can I invite people in? And it always leads to a great conversation, and as a team feeling better, because usually people have the same things weighing on them as you do.
Yeah, there's this kind of misnomer about leadership. I have to have all the answers. I need to have the perfect plan. I need to show up, and people will just magically, like, you're brilliant and I'm going to follow you, versus I don't know where I'm going and I need your help, and how powerful that can be.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you maybe a little bit about where we started this. Right before we started on this, you were talking about the choice to reopen. So can you talk a little bit about that? This is a business that is necessary, but you made a decision that was really hard to make when you close it down. Can you talk a little about reopening it?
Yeah, so when we decided to close, there were several reasons. And One is I knew the procedures that we had at that time, we couldn't look in the mirror and say they were safe because we hadn't adapted them at all based on the situation that we're in. And so over the last 2 months, we could have reopened because we are considered an essential business. We chose to stay closed to make sure that we could really with confidence say that when we reopen, we've got the systems, the procedures, the PPE, all the things that we need to keep our team safe and our customers safe. And we really took the team along with us. You know, throughout the last 2 months, we've asked, what makes you feel unsafe about coming to work? And how can we take these fears into account as we're making these decisions together? And so in this first phase of reopening, we are starting with vacant spaces and commercial jobs that we would be cleaning after hours and residential jobs in which our customers will not be home. And we've got a lot of new PPE, masks and goggles and gloves and booties and all kinds of things. We've done microbial training with our industry and everyone's certified. And also, we are not forcing anyone to work. We've got a group of people who are itching to get back to work. They can't wait. And then we've got people who still don't feel comfortable despite all the things that we've done, and that's okay. And I think a one-size-fits-all approach does not work right now. We really have to, display empathy, meet people where they are, and most importantly, not create this dynamic where people have to choose, between working and not getting a paycheck. Because what I don't want is someone who really doesn't feel unsafe feeling like they have to work because they have to pay their bills. So we've said, okay, if you don't really feel comfortable right now, we're going to find virtual opportunities for you in the meantime. And maybe there will be a day where we'll have, the team is back to work. And if you're not comfortable, maybe at this point, it's time to find another position and another job that will make you feel really safe. But we're not at that day today or anywhere near it. So that's kind of been our process over the last couple months.
And it's interesting because as you're talking about it like that, you might imagine how that's going to impact recruiting either positively or negatively in the future about how organizations are showing up today, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our customers too. We have customers who really want us to come back and customers who are saying, I would like to wait a couple months, and honoring where they are.
I know that we've talked a lot about the kind of the current circumstance, COVID and whatnot. When you were kind of in your normal day-to-day operation, you made a choice to say, if you're going to work for Student Maid, we're going to pour some love and attention and some leadership skills into you. So for those who are not familiar, the organization employs students primarily at the University of Florida, and you can get this job, you can earn some cash, which college students tend to need, but also you are able to partake in some leadership training that Student Maid offers. How did you, from a business decision, how did you arrive at, we're going to do this? My population of people, they're going to turn over. I'm going to pour all of this into you, and you're going to leave me. That's the whole point. Like, you're going to graduate and move on. So what's the logic behind, I'm going to give you leadership training at the same time?
Well, it all began really organically and not on purpose. At the beginning of the business, I was learning so many things as a new leader. And so, for example, I would go to a networking event and I would have to learn how to introduce myself and be confident, even when I didn't really feel confident. And so I would leave that and I think, if I had to learn this, maybe the people in the company will have to learn this one day. And so I would say, hey team, if you want to hear about my first networking experience, come to the office and I'll buy pizza. And everyone would show up. And then I would read books and I would say, read this book about leadership. If you want me to teach you what was in it, come to the office, we'll get pizza. And so that's how it began. And now it's definitely a more formalized approach. We have certain classes that everyone takes when they join the team, where we teach listening, which we learned from your amazing team. And we teach feedback and recognition and how to address conflict and how to find your strengths, and just all these things that are so critical to success, but yet we're not taught in school. And then the job itself is designed to really empower, help them build resilience. They don't have anyone over their shoulders. They're working in teams. Really, the students lead the company. And so I think what happens is we define success in business and in leadership a lot by retention. If your people are sticking around, then you're good. And so what that does is we focus on that measure And I think it can lead to us keeping people hostage. Like, people want to move on, but we manipulate them to stay because, oh no, if they leave, our retention score is affected. And what we've tried to do is say, no, the point is we're here to help you get your wings. And then whenever you're ready to use them, we're going to stand back. And sometimes that means that you're going to use them to go somewhere else in our company. And sometimes that means you're going to go out and make your mark on the world somewhere else. And we support you no matter what. And it's almost like once you stop focusing on retention, people don't want to leave because they know how much they matter to you.
Which is interesting. You caused the opposite problem. No, I really want you to fly free.
Yeah,
There's a question. Go, fly free. Matt has a story about ducks that we'll tell you offline. There's a question in the chat that is curious how you choose which training and philosophies to follow. Like, what are your go-to sources?
You all, for sure, is our number one. We take a very custom approach. So we do something called Development Day once a quarter, where we bring our whole team together, and it's a day of just investing and pouring into them. And it's not about cleaning, and it's all about just leadership development. And we really ask them, what do you want to learn about? What are the topics that are on your mind? What are the skills that you want to hone? And we really try to drive our curriculum based on the current needs of the team and the interests that they have.
So that's a great transition, because another question came in and it said, and then we're going to ask this one that I think Sarah's going to transition us into a little lightning round with you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And then we're actually going to give some leadership development content right here at the end of it for the audience. But the question is, in addition to authenticity, what soft skills should leaders develop in the quote unquote new normal?
First of all, why do we call them soft skills? They're so hard to learn, and they're everything.
Hey, just the reader of the question here.
I know.
We're with you.
I know. Okay, so let's see. Problem solving, vulnerability, communication, empathy, relationships. I might have already said communication, feedback, how we handle tension. I really think that the soft skills are really what determine success. I think that's the approach we've taken, is like, how can the cleaning skills are important, but how can we invest and teach as many of these soft skills as we can?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think research would say that about 80% of careers, as it gets into a senior level, are derailed, not because of your thinking prowess or your strategic alignment or your understanding the industry. It's derailed because of those. Because for some reason you just can't get along with people. And just give you a little bit of training. It's really interesting to think about, Raj Sisodia is a good friend of ours as well. And what you kind of described a lot is the responsibility of business to develop people. Like, we didn't stop learning just because we're out of college as adults, right?
Yeah.
Sarah's got some really quick questions for you. We call it the lightning round.
Okay, I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Best advice you ever received?
Things don't go according to plan, and that is the plan.
Wow. That is lightning.
That was fast.
Usually we have to wait for these things to come out, but goodness.
So good.
Well done.
Worst job you ever had?
Working in a bagel shop.
Okay. As a what?
As a bagel toaster.
Hold on. What other jobs are there in a bagel shop? Like,
Cheers.
Marketing.
Cream cheese spreader, bagel toaster.
Just curious.
And the reason it was my worst job is because I was alone every day. It was just me. That's why.
Toasted bagels. I like it. Favorite book?
Oh, don't do this to me. Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, because it taught me that culture is a feeling.
And for those of you who have not been on Kristen's website, you can go and get her whole reading list. So that's why it's a tough question for her to answer, because she's an avid reader, and she color coordinates her books. So there's a fact. What is one thing everyone should know about growing up in Florida? Like your home state, home city. What's one thing that you go, this is what people either get wrong about Florida or everybody should know about Florida?
You take the beach for granted. I'm sitting here thinking, why didn't I go to the beach more?
Good place to run. Speaking of which, where's the place that you go to recharge?
It can be anywhere. I do think weeks. where I just go by myself for a week. I think, I reflect, I read.
And what the last place you did that? Where'd you go?
Michigan, in our home, but I was by myself in our home.
Got it. If you had to have dinner with someone alive today, right now, who would it be and why?
My parents, because I miss them. I haven't.
Are they not in your house?
I've gone. No, this is the longest I've gone without seeing them.
Okay. It's kind of funny, actually. You're the second person to answer our lightning round question that way, and so typically you would get kind of the famous person or the thoughtful person or favorite author, and I think it speaks a lot to the current times and current condition that people are like, I pick a family member, somebody that I just miss a lot. And then final lightning round question, your last piece of advice for anyone who's a small business CEO during this time.
How are you going to find the gift in what we're experiencing right now, so that one day you can look back, and not today and not tomorrow and not next month and not next year, but one day in the future, you'll look back and you'll say, I am so thankful that I learned this, or that this came out of this. And we're creating that story right now. So what story are you going to create, and what is the gift that's going to come out of this?
That's true. The powerful moments in life, we're going to talk about it. So what are we going to say and write what you want that to be? Yeah. All right. Well,
pure gold. We're bringing it back.
Pure gold. We're bringing it back to the slides. We promised you guys just kind of one kind of leadership tool, tip, trick, idea that you can actually implement right now today. And so we picked one of Kristen's favorites. She wrote about it in Permission to Screw Up. I know that she uses it all the time. So I'm just going to give you the tool, and then she's going to talk about how she uses it and the impact that it's had. And it's a real simple one, and it's FBI. Which is both how to start difficult conversations, and it's also how to recognize and celebrate people in your organization. It's directly tied to why emotional intelligence is so critical, whether we want to call it a soft skill or not, why it's so critical from a leadership standpoint. My ability to share how am I feeling about a situation, what the behavior is that somebody is doing, and what the impact of that behavior is on other people. And so if I'm trying to start a difficult conversation, whether it's in that kind of category of confrontation, or perhaps it's just feedback, rather than saying, here's all the 20 things you've done wrong, I'm going to do my best to articulate, here's how I'm feeling about it. I'm going to approach the person. I'm going to say, I really need your help. This is kind of a generic answer, but I'm just anxious and worried. You're repeatedly interrupting people in meetings and have missed opportunities to listen. The team, I have noticed, is less willing to speak up, and overall our team engagement is down. I really need your help to improve our culture. It's a different way to start that conversation when things are really tough to talk about. On the positive end, that formula is exactly the same. And so I'm going to think about it in the same way when I want to recognize the positive things I'm seeing in my organization. So what is the feeling? And this is the tough part. I have to dig in and say, how is this actually making me feel? What is that specific behavior? I want to call out, if I want to see that behavior more often, I want to name what that behavior is. And then I'm going to say, here's the ripple effect of that behavior. And I really need you to know the impact you're having on the team. So I'm inspired by your commitment to our continuous improvement journey, your thoughts and ideas on how we can work better as a team, not only save us time, they encourage others to think more creatively about their work. We're a better, stronger team because of you. So same formula, feelings, behavior, impact works for both. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to talk about how she's used this tool.
We love the FBI. The FBI is actually a part of our training, and our team members learn about the FBI before they learn how to clean a window or vacuum a rug. I think that it's really effective when we can all use the same feedback language. And oftentimes, especially in my company, the people that are working with us, this is their first job oftentimes. And even if it's not our first job, we aren't taught this in the classroom. And so we emulate maybe what we've experienced when it comes to recognizing and celebrating people, starting difficult conversations. And sometimes we have really healthy examples and sometimes we don't. And so we found that just teaching this, it makes it really easy. You can go and say, I need to give you an FBI, and everyone knows what that means. it's been really powerful. And I think it teaches people how to use their voice. And really, we want everyone to be heard and seen. And so this is just a really great way to help accomplish that.
Thanks for listening to the Everybody Matters podcast. Again, if you'd like to find out more about Kristen Hadeed, go to her website, kristenhadeed.com. If you'd like to find out more about Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute, the services they offer, go to ccoleadership.com. And if you want to know more about Bob Chapman and Raj Sisodia's book, Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family, go to everybodymattersbook.com. And then for updates on the book, this podcast, and a lot of great content and insight, don't forget to connect with us on the web at Barry-Wehmiller.com, on Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and check out our blog, trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there. And again, we're all going to get through this together.